Hello, welcome to Gardener's World, and a special Gardener's World too, because it's Easter, which gives us 4 free days, both to work in the garden and to enjoy this emergence that is bursting out everywhere. And also relaxing and enjoying all the evidence of spring, which despite slightly dodgy weather we've been having over the last few weeks, is nevertheless just sweeping through, reaching every corner of the garden. I'm adding in a bit of colour here. This is a Dicentra spectabilis, although in fact it has technically changed its name. But if you buy it, it will certainly be sold as Dicentra, and I will always know it as that, Bleeding Heart. And it is one of those woodland spring flowers that is quite happy in a little bit of shade. So underneath this rose, and at the front of the border here, it just adds that softness of colour mixed with the forget-me-nots that is perfect here for the cottage garden. Now, as well as being Easter, we're back to the full hour. So lots to do, and lots to see and enjoy. Coming up on today's programme, Carol visits Bosvigo Gardens in Cornwall to revel in the subtle beauty of shade-loving plants.
Shade offers us the opportunity to grow all sorts of wondrous plants. And this garden is the most brilliant example.
And Adam goes to the garden at Morton Hall in Worcestershire that includes a spectacular meadow.
We call it a magic carpet. We have about 250,000 fritillaries in here, wow, which is nowadays such a rarity.
And I shall be planting peas, as well as making sure that my mown grass is looking as good as it possibly can. But first, I'm joined here at Longmeadow by an old friend. Come on, Doris. I'm very happy to be spending the day with Rachel Detain. Early last year, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, she's made great progress through her treatment, and I'm looking forward to catching up with all her news. Hi, Rachel. Hello.
Hello, you. Hello, you.
She's brought a trowel. How are you?
Hello, you.
So have you had a look
Hi,
around?
Nigel.
Nigel hasn't changed. A little bit older, like the
hasn't
rest of
changed.
us. But no, you can let go of that now.
Pretty
There we
much
are.
the same.
Good job.
I've not seen this.
This, I think, was a greenhouse when you were last
I
here.
think it was, and I was very confused. Came through here and thought, well, where am I? Because I don't recognise this at all.
It really is work in progress. We've just started the planting. The acuminata tulips are just coming into bud. They won't be flowering for another couple of weeks, I wouldn't have thought. The steeper will just soften everything down.
I love the steep. I love that movement that you get, even now when they're quite small plants.
Yeah, and today I thought we would put in some Verbena bonariensis.
That'll give a bit of height.
Yes,
to it.
exactly. If we just start placing out
Okay.
the Verbena, the idea is that they are rising above the grasses and just floating through.
Lovely.
We've got 24 in each of these trays, so it's 12 to each bed. So if you take one bed and I take another,
Okay.
and then we can place them and plant them.
Just put them in.
Yeah. So we're just plonking them.
Plonking, that's
Well,
a good...
we're plonking where
good
your
term.
eye feels they're going to serve the overall effect best.
It's interesting, isn't it, how there's just somewhere that feels right.
Yes. Personally, looking at yours, I think they look great, and I think mine look okay. So let's start planting,
They look
shall
great,
we?
Monty. They're great.
OK, it's getting hot. Let's get down to work. Come on.
OK.
It's lovely to see you and looking great, but you have had one hell of a year.
It has been one hell of a year.
Yeah. How do you feel now?
Well, I feel an awful lot better. All the difficult bit is really done. So I feel a big sense of relief.
And you, who I know, are incredibly sort of can-do and practical and tackle things.
I think for me, that's very largely where the gardening came into it.
Right.
Because I now realise how fortunate, enormously fortunate I've been that I already had that passion and that interest, because it sustained me. But it seemed that the whole process of being ill, it's made me just so much more aware. Everything's hyper-real, you know, it's all The colours are brighter. I notice every tiny bud, every little tiny thing feels like this huge gift. And so, in a sense, that's been the upside of it, because you see everything anew and it's all fresh and wonderful and you really appreciate it.
How much time have you been able to spend in the garden?
So last year there was a lot of time when I couldn't really garden very much at all. And I still had a lot of benefit just from going outside when I didn't feel like it, sort of making myself get outside.
And was it the intensity of the beauty of small things, or the process of gardening that was most helpful?
Both. But
Right.
initially, when I couldn't do a lot of gardening, it was just the being, you know, look, with plants is wonderful, it's cathartic. And then gradually building up on that, and it's something to do with being in the moment, because your head's spinning the whole time and you can't help worrying and you're thinking about all sorts of possible outcomes and things that might happen. And if you're just coming outside and you're deadheading or you're planting a few things or sowing seeds, then you're in that moment and you're doing that. And that's just, I mean, how could this not be joyful? You know, this is, for me, this is absolute heaven. You know, you've made a paradise garden, and it is. This is paradise for me.
And as well as being in the moment, of course, when you sow seeds, or you plant a plant, you are trusting in a future.
Yep. So you just have to live your life and get on with it. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to do. And it's not perfect and it's not easy, but, you know, with help, with my family, my friends and so on, I'm getting there.
Well, I'm so
For
pleased,
sure.
and it's lovely to see you here.
No, it's, well, as I said,
And I know that,
blessed to
that
be.
millions of people will be very, very happy
Yeah.
to see you. So, let's crack on.
Exactly.
Let's push on
Let's
and
put
plant
these plants in
and
this
invest
soil.
in this future. I think your story, Rachel, and let's face it, millions of others, testify that gardens and gardening, however modest, have a healing effect. This can work on a communal level too. And Joe and Flo have been along to Walsall in the West Midlands to visit a project where gardening is clearly playing an important role, and they offered to lend a hand.
Over the years, we've worked on all types of gardens and outdoor spaces, and whilst we might be just a little bit biased, we think that gardening is one of life's greatest pleasures.
But what makes it even better, if that's at all possible, is when a garden is providing an extra special something, like this place in Birmingham.
Yeah, here on this allotment, there's a plot that's being run by some new but very enthusiastic gardeners, and we're here to give them a helping hand, help get their grassroots project growing and off the ground. See what I did there, Flo? See that?
The joke?
Yeah.
Ah, that was a joke.
It's gonna be a long day, isn't it? I can see that, yeah. This is the Open Doors project, which offers 7 to 11-year-olds the chance to play and learn in the outdoors.
This one's called Edna. She's very friendly.
Can I prove?
Yeah, you can touch her.
All the children that use the site have additional or special needs, and this space gives them somewhere to explore their gardening skills with all the support and encouragement they need.
And I tell you what, Joe, those gardening skills are already looking pretty sharp.
Oh, I found something! Slug!
With only a day for us to get stuck in, I'm keen to find out more from project leader Kate Millington. So, why did you start the project?
Well, I'm a special needs teacher, and having worked in the city, I noticed that there's not many opportunities for children with learning disabilities to access the outdoors. So I wanted to offer them something different that would benefit them.
Yeah, and why do you need some extra help in the project?
Well, I'm not a horticulturalist, I'm a teacher, and I've been picking things up as I go along, but it'd be really good to have some advice on growing different plants and vegetables.
Yeah.
We wanted to add some sensory experiences by putting in sensory plants today.
Yeah.
And also build a sort of a quiet den area for if they get a bit overwhelmed.
Well, I think even with the little knowledge you say you have, you've done a great job to begin with. So we're here to just give you some advice, some inspiration, and a bit of muscle.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, whilst Flo's getting the lowdown from Kate, I'm just going to check out what they've got. They've got some beautiful raised beds, perfect for growing some vegetables in, and the soil looks immaculate. Quite jealous of the soil. They've got a lovely greenhouse, which is always useful, and an interactive sort of musical area as well, but I really need to talk to the experts. The project has around 40 children who come and use the site from the Birmingham area.
Whoa.
We don't want to eat the leaves, so what we have to do
Yeah, I know. Cut
is
it.
cut it there.
And today we've got 6 of the keen gardeners who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
What?
So have you been here before?
Yeah.
And what did you do here last time?
We're feeding the chickens, digging. I can see a worm.
You can see a worm. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Miss,
Can you see how big it
can't
looks?
see anything.
Wow. Do you know the name of that?
No, a key shield.
A shield bug, yeah. Look at the camera.
So Malachi, would you rather be outdoors or indoors?
Outside. Inside's boring.
You
I saw the worm.
Did you see a worm? I haven't seen any worms since we've been digging.
I saw one on the
In
top.
here? Hey, look at the shape. Look at it moving. What do you think you'd like to grow?
Apples.
Apples.
And oranges.
Mm-hmm.
Or tambourines, you could call them that.
All right.
Do you know what's going to go in here yet?
The seeds.
Okay.
Flowers.
Flowers.
Like wildflowers. Some flowers can be on this side and then the fruits can be on that side.
Sounds like a plan. Flo and I have only got a day here on the allotment to give this project a helping hand, so there's no hanging about. So how long have you been doing this project?
We've been going just about a year now, so we're still quite new, but we're trying to develop it and get as many kids on board as we can.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, the kids seem to respond amazingly to being outside. You can just see them loving every
They
second
do, they
of it.
absolutely love it, and seeing how they've engaged and how excited they are when they've picked vegetables they've grown themselves, it's absolutely amazing for them.
Yeah. And what about you? How much time do you have to put into it?
I actually left full-time work at Christmas in order to be able to focus on this. So I work a few days a week as a special needs teacher, and then I'm trying to focus on this and build it up so we can get more and more kids come into the allotment. They see the seasonal changes. We've got frog spawn at the moment, so then they'll see them develop, they see the plants grow, and then they can harvest them at the end. So they get to see so much of nature and the outdoors.
Yes, well, honestly, what you're doing here is incredible. I mean, we're just trying to help a little bit, you know. Right, we've got another couple of these planters to get, and then the kids can help fill up the compost and we can get planting.
Let's go.
Come on. Let's go this way. Come on.
We'll be joining Joe and Flo a little later on in the programme to see how that planting goes when they will be helping to make a sensory garden. Now, while Nellie is showing Rachel around the garden and the various changes since she was last here, I thought I'd just do one or two little jobs. Here in the top greenhouse, we don't really try and actively grow much in here, but protect all those plants ranging from succulents and salvias and streptocarpus that would suffer if it was too wet or too cold. And here at Longmeadow, it's usually both that we suffer from in winter. But these citrus are now gearing up to take their pride of place outside, and these, in fact, will go into the Paradise Garden. And you can see signs of growth. New shoots appearing on that orange, and here, new flowers appearing on the lemon. And that is the key to give them a feed and some water. Now, I feed them liquid seaweed. And you can see, I've got some in here. And the ratio to feed them is about 30 to 1. Now, over the years, I've learnt what that looks like, and it's half a jam jar, and I splosh it into a watering can. The basic rule of any feed is it's far better to underfeed than to overfeed, because if you do that, you're simply going to attract aphids and slugs and snails to the excess soft, sappy new growth. What it will promote is good root growth, flowers and fruit. But if in doubt, you can't go far wrong with a basic tomato feed. I watered these about once a month over the winter, no more, so we're going to start to water them more, about every 10 days to 2 weeks. And as the weather warms up, that will go up to once a week. And when you water citrus of any kind, soak, don't sprinkle. Give them a really good soak. Right, that's a little job done, but it's all part of this movement from winter through spring into summer. So I'll keep these doors open for another few hours in the middle of the day because I want these plants to harden off as best as possible. Think of hardening off as a gradual process, not a one-off event. And be responsive. If it turns cold and frosty, they either might have to be brought back in or covered over. But it won't be long before you can relax and all your plants can be outside and you don't need to worry about them. Okay, on to something else. I expect that most people with grass to mow have made a cut or two this year. And if you haven't, though, it's certainly time. But a couple of tips. Don't rush out and scalp it. If you scalp the grass and take almost all of it off down to the ground, the roots will suffer. Because like any other green plant, the roots are fed through photosynthesis. And it's the green in the leaf that is feeding back down into the roots. So if you haven't cut the grass all winter and this is your first time, just take an inch off. And then maybe in a few days' time, take a little bit more off. Take a week or two to get down to the level you want, and then cut at least once a week. And that way you're building up nice, healthy grass. And if the grass is healthy, then there won't be a chance for the weeds to get in. Almost everybody, by the end of winter, has some bare patches on their lawn or grass paths. Even just a little bare patch like this here is not going to improve on its own in a hurry. So the first thing I need to do is get a fork and really dig down deep and wiggle it about. And do that all the way along. Okay, that has loosened things up. And then, if I really want to improve things, I'm going to add a little bit of sharp sand just to ensure there's drainage. So if I just sprinkle the sand on it like this, it will fall into the holes that I've made. And then I'm going to scratch it over with this just to rough up the surface a bit. Now, if you think you're destroying your lawn by doing this, don't worry, because grass is tough stuff. Now, the final step is just to sprinkle a little bit of seed onto it. This is a general purpose grass seed mix. However, you can nowadays get seed that is adapted for very specific situations. So you can get seed for very shady areas, or for very damp areas, or even very dry ones. And it may well be worth hunting those out. So whatever you use it thinly. You will not get better grass by over-sowing. So very gently, just rake it over without spreading the seed too much, and then water it. And it's very important that you water every day, unless there's a decent amount of rain, until you start to see the wispy first bits of grass growing. Even then, just keep it damp until it's strong enough to mow. And don't mow it until it is about 2 inches long. Because as I say, the longer the grass, the stronger the roots. That's a bit of mowing, a bit of repair. Now here's a tip that is cheating really, but it works. Now the reason why it's cheating is because you can make a lawn look much better without actually touching the lawn. If you crisp up the edges, everything suddenly looks better. Now obviously you have traditional edging shears and you just cut along like that. Quite difficult to keep it dead straight, but when you pick up the pieces, you can see that you establish an edge which you then keep clipped. If you want to take out a little bit more, you can use a cutter. Now, I use this. More often than not, they come as a half moon shape, but a spade, a sharp spade, will do the job just as well. And what I do recommend is you put a board down, get it straight, and by standing on it, you keep it straight. And then you just, like this, push down, and that cuts a new edge. This is very simple, but it's a great way to sharpen up the garden generally, as well as the grass. And if you want to grow good grass, just remember the Trinity. Plenty of sunshine, plenty of water, and as good drainage as you can organise. But there are a whole raft of plants that actively enjoy shade, whether it be dry or wet. And Carol has been down to Bosvigo Gardens in Cornwall to see a wonderful selection of shade-loving plants.
Lots of us have shade in our gardens. Maybe it's cast by the house next door or the garage, or just trees within the garden. And a lot of people think that it creates a problem. What on earth are we going to grow in such places? But that's really a misconception in actual fact. Shade offers us the opportunity to grow all sorts of wondrous plants. And this garden is the most brilliant example of how to do that. The majority of this north-facing plot spends most of the year in deep shade. Plants here compete for moisture with the trees, and during the summer the soil can be as dry as dust. Despite that, this garden is a rich tapestry of colour and texture. Far from being problematic, there are just so many plants that you can grow in shady places. And this is a beautiful example of just what you can do. A rhythm is made, this beautiful sort of music right the way through the bed by using these big clumps of epimediums. Very dainty plants, but nonetheless they make this solid statement going through. The emphasis is on copper and brilliant yellow. And then that's taken up by things like this golden hellebore, a big bright spark in the centre of it. And as if that wasn't enough, there's this little adiantum, a maidenhair fern, and its colour picked up by this epimedium. And then your eye is taken right to the other side of the path by an acer with exactly the same sort of colouring. And all of them are thriving in the shade. This is a lovely, simple but very telling combination. It's quite sort of metallic in a way. It's got this lovely silvery sheen to the whole thing. And it's composed mainly of 3 plants. First of all, there's this little pale blue muscari. It's called baby's breath. It runs right through the planting. And then this very choice, very, very special erythronium. This one's called Jeanette Brickell, one of the most graceful of the dog's tooth violets. And then a plant you're not really expecting to see. It's an Astelia from New Zealand. And people use these in hot, sunny plantings, but not a bit of it. This is the place for it. This is the kind of place where it grows in its native land. And it looks wonderful here, and providing a real contrast with these sharp leaves. to all this lovely softness in front of it. What a perfect springtime picture. It's one thing now, but just imagine what it's going to be like in the summer. For a start, they're growing underneath a small Acer, and if you look beyond it, there's a much, much bigger Acer, a huge sycamore, which is just going to throw this whole area into dense, dense shade. And then imagine what's happening under the ground too. The roots of that sycamore must be right the way through this place, depriving this soil of moisture and nutrients. So how do these plants cope? They've evolved to exploit this particular period before the canopy fills in overhead. They're true Cinderella plants. They have to get everything done before the clock strikes 12. The epimedium has fine fibrous roots that just spread out, using every bit of moisture there is. On the other hand, the erythroniums thrust their roots deep into the soil. They're bulbous and they go down deep, 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 just to make sure that they've got this springtime opportunity to flower beautifully, to set seed, and then to go to sleep. Who doesn't love blue flowers? And this has to be one of the bluest of the blues. It's Omphalodes cappadocica. I adore it. It comes from the mountains of Turkey, and it grows on north-facing slopes in very thin soil, so it hardly ever sees the sun. It's ideal under shrubs and trees, where it'll make these little carpets spangled with flowers for months on end in the spring. Omphalodes mixes beautifully with other plants, or it can be a standalone specimen. And there are other plants too that can really steal the show. Trilliums are fascinating woodland plants with everything in threes. Trillium rivali from the United States is a miniature, and it's suitable even in a cameo planting in a tiny garden. Occasionally, epimediums hybridise spontaneously. This beauty appeared here at Bosvigo of its own accord. This diminutive treasure is Lathyrus vernus alborosaeus. It's a long-lived perennial, easy to start from seed, and it will grow happily in dappled shade. You don't have to have a 4-acre wood or a huge, great big garden to grow these plants. Any shady spot is perfect for these kind of lovely spring woodlanders. They don't need a lot of food. These are plants that can thrive on poverty, but they will appreciate working in some organic matter into the soil before you start. Good compost, a bit of leaf mould, that would be ideal. And just work the soil gently over before you plant. Now, most of these plants grow quite superficially, colonising the woodland floor. Things like the wood anemones grow just a couple of inches below the surface of the soil. It's a great idea to give them a mulch during the winter. But remember, put them together in combinations that are really going to thrill you. I adore these plants because for me, they celebrate the beginning of spring.
I completely agree with Carol. These early herbaceous perennials and woodland plants have a real combination of delicacy and hope that is special. But they combine really well with some of the more dramatic spring flowers. The imperial fritillary is probably the best and biggest example of the lot, but also the tulips and the daffodils. And that combination of longevity and subtlety and high drama is one of the wonders of the year. But some of the early perennials can do with a helping hand. I love epimediums, but certain varieties hold their flowers buried down in amongst the foliage. So you need to get in there and use a long pair of scissors or a pair of secateurs and remove last year's leaves. And these are the ones that have bronzed off. And follow the old stems right down to the ground and then cut them back. And as the older foliage is removed, you start to reveal these lovely, delicate flowers, and also the new foliage, which in itself is very attractive. Now, still to come, Rachel and I start planting a brand new border here at Longmeadow. But first, Adam goes to Worcestershire to visit a magnificent garden that combines tradition with clever modern design.
This is a wonderful time of year. The garden's full of hope and colours are really starting to flow. But how do you keep that going right throughout the year? Well, here at Moreton Hall in Worcestershire, they've turned succession planting into a fine art. You know, this meadow is absolutely incredible. I just want to explore, but also get down into it and enjoy the detail. For me, I think it's really clever. It's the way that it drags that season out. It starts in February with the crocus and finishes probably about mid-May with the chamaesyas. The layers are lovely, but you might be thinking, it's all right, but I haven't got 2 acres to put aside. But maybe you could just leave an area of the lawn, maybe a small circle that creates a picture and play with those bulbs through the season. Added layer here that I love is the cherries and the amelanchias, which just really finish things off. In 2007, Anna and her husband Renee came to view Moreton Hall, which is set in 8 acres of beautiful countryside. And instantly, Anna just fell in love. What was it that caught your eye when you...
Well, you're just looking at it.
Right.
I made my husband stop the car and said, this is it. I've never seen anything like this. This is what we're going to buy.
So literally you came up, saw the meadow.
It was just unbelievable. And he said, don't you want to see the house? And I said, no, not necessarily, we'll have that. Everything else can be fixed. But this, you can't invent. So
I absolutely love that.
we call it a magic carpet because it's also this multi-story thing going on. You see, you have the little woodland anemones underneath, you have the cowslips, the ox slips, which is very rare, and then you have the fritillaries with 40% white, which is also very rare.
Yeah.
And I think we have about 250,000 fritillaries in here.
Wow.
And then you have on top this floating white narcissus, and I think there's just nothing like it.
That's beautiful, isn't it? It's just got that lovely sort of journey that takes you through.
Yes.
Since owning Moreton Hall, Anna has created 7 gardens, including a Japanese-inspired stroll garden, the West Garden with its stunning views, the East Terrace and the South Garden. But it's taken an awful lot of work to get there. Give me an idea about what the rest of the garden was like.
Scary. Some Edwardian laurel had been planted and just taken over.
Wow, so it must have felt actually...
Very claustrophobic.
Claustrophobic,
You would
yeah.
stand on the front lawn and think this place is small.
Right. So what did you do, first of all?
Well, take it away.
Yeah.
The idea was to reinstate an 18th century feel with lots of vistas and lots of space. But at the same time, use the arts and crafts idea of having gardens with individual characters. We created 7 gardens. So you go from garden to garden, and while they are individual experience and quite dramatic, you still have a connection between them. And we do that using the tricks of the trade. We're using hard landscape, we use planting style, and we use colours.
I can see that when we're walking around and you're talking about this garden, there's a passion in there. But where did it come from?
I've always loved flowers, but I always would have loved to be able to paint. I can't for the life of me, so this is my opportunity.
So
I'm painting.
So this is your
with
canvas,
hands.
in a way?
Exactly.
And one more question. Is there anywhere in the garden that you're particularly sort of drawn to? I always like to ask, you know, a
Yes,
gardener
I
that.
hear that question very
Yeah.
often, and my answer is always there are moments. And at this time of the year, if you go into the stroll garden, you will find one of those moments in time when everything is perfect.
You can see why Anna is drawn to this part of the garden. The atmosphere is completely different. It feels more intimate, and you're hit by these blues and whites, tiny little touches of yellow, the celebration of spring. I also like the way the path moves through the planting. But not just that, the way it's laid. They're not all even, so it slows you and you have to enjoy the detail that's in that planting. But for me, in here, it's got to be the water. Straight away, it feels cooler, but the reflections, just absolutely beautiful. The birches. And then on top of that, I've got the sound, which just calms everything down. But the interesting part of the garden is the fact you always feel like you're just being drawn on to the next experience. Here, above me, was that problem plant that worked its way across the garden, the laurels. With just some clever pruning, you know, that problem plant could become your solution. And that's exactly what's happened here. You know, they've created this breathing space between the two gardens just by cutting a simple tunnel through. You can do that in a small garden. You know, it might be that you want to move from hot colours to cool colours and you put some grasses through or some simple foliage, you know, can really help you move from space to space. And the last thing here is the material. The rock that's used around the water is then picked up back against that bank. I'm now in a woodland and it feels absolutely lovely. But if you look at that bank, it could have just been a grass bank with some trees in it. It's a real feature. The rock just works its way through. But also there's been a lot of thought put into the planting. Like the meadow out there, there's real succession to this planting. I'm looking around me. I've got things like hellebores and brunner are just doing their thing. And then you look, there's digitalis. Foxgloves are going to just pop up. I really loved it when Anna said earlier on that for her gardening wasn't necessarily about chasing the big thing. It was the little moments of joy. And you can see that in this planting right across the whole garden.
Come on, good girl. Come on. If you feel inspired to visit Moreton Hall yourself, well, you can later in the year because it's open under the National Garden Scheme, along with over 3,500 other private gardens right across the country. As well as NGS gardens, there are lots of other gardens bursting into life. And Easter is a great time to visit and get inspired. For spectacular tulip displays, Pashley Manor in East Sussex is well worth a visit. And for spring blossom, Alnwick Garden in Northumberland is a must. Snake's Head Fritillaries are another popular spring bulb performing right now in the meadow at Waterbury Gardens in Oxford. For a blaze of seasonal colour, head to Inverary Castle in Scotland or Bodmin Garden in North Wales to see their rhododendrons and azaleas. Or if the delicate beauty of a woodland garden is more your thing, Beth Chatto's garden in Essex is a delight in any season. Visit our website for more information and ideas. We can do that. Come on.
Come on, this way. Nellie, come on.
Right. This bare piece of soil
Yes.
is intended to become a dyer's bed.
Oh.
The intention is that we plant this up entirely with plants that we can use to make dye.
Oh, I love that idea.
So I've got a barrel load of plants.
Get some of those
Yeah,
out.
we can get those
see
out.
what you've got in here.
So that is
There you go.
woad
Whoa.
and perfect.
Same, but there's
yeah,
without
exactly
the
the same. And
flower.
there's a story in here because the thing about woad, and everybody knows that woad makes blue,
Yes.
and it's the foliage that makes blue. But I'm a novice at this.
Well, do you know, that makes two of us. I'm very glad, actually, because we can learn together.
Good.
How
Well,
to
one
do
thing
this.
I learned, and I don't know if you knew, that if you let woad flower,
Yep.
it severely reduces the efficacy of the dyeing potential in the
Right,
leaves.
so you want more like that.
That's what we're looking for, and to try and,
Okay.
and pick the leaves before they flower. What I thought we could do is if we planted them and collected the seed, I could then have material for sowing for more.
Yeah. What
This
else?
is
Got a
the
couple-
Hypericum.
These.
The yellow flowers are apparently a really good dye. And one of the things that I've been thinking about, I don't know about you, is quite how to tackle this, because do we include it in the cottage garden so it looks part of the whole, or do we say this is like a vegetable bed where we're growing a crop?
My feeling is the latter, that you have to think of it as a productive space. You are specifically growing these plants for the dye, and therefore they're not necessarily going to be beautiful together, and I think you've got to sacrifice that. But I know it's, I can see for you.
No, I'm not going to do it.
That's a difficult one to
That's
do.
very ruthless. We're going to be harvesting the flowers,
That is true.
so there won't be many flowers to see.
complicated.
It is very
Complicated. You've got to
So
balance all
we're
these
gonna-
different
I
things.
thought we could put that there and
Yeah.
bung that down the other end so it balances
So
down
roughly
the other
the
end.
same.
Yeah,
You'll
roughly the same. Not
so
too close to the box edge, but
symmetrical-ish.
yeah.
Right, I'm going to move that one.
Now, in pursuit of the beautiful garden that also is productive and makes flowers, I've got hollyhocks.
Ah, which I love.
The flowers, again, give you the colour. So the yellow
Yep.
and that lovely plummy pink, that tells you the sort of colour that you're going to be expecting. What have you got there?
Right, next, madder. Now, that's my favourite dye colour. I cannot wait to see
So it's a
how
sort
this
of
turns
rose.
This is that whole range
Yeah,
from soft
yeah,
pinks through to really dark rusty reds,
Right.
and I think it depends on all sorts of things, the sort of type of soil you have.
You need a lot of madder
Yes.
to make a little dye, don't you?
Yeah.
Because it's the root.
Yeah.
People do say that madder is very invasive.
Yes. So you're going to risk it in the bed, or should we
Well,
put it
I
in containers?
quite like an invasion of madder at the moment.
Just don't say to me in 3 years, I wish I hadn't put that madder in that bed. OK.
Right,
there we go.
finally.
And finally, calendula, and I love these because you put them in once, they self-seed, you never have to do it again.
And as a dye, not an intense, bright chemical orange, but a much subtler colour.
Yeah.
Let's start planting.
Right.
I'm planting this hollyhock, and one of the problems we have is drainage. Would you, if you know that the drainage is not quite to a plant's taste, add grit to the planting hole?
Do you know, I used to, but I think there's always a danger of creating a sump under that plant, so you just get more water sort of collecting at the bottom of that. But I think I would probably try and just incorporate some grit across the whole bed, or maybe just not put that plant there.
It's heavy, but it drains. Right, I'm going to divide this up. So now I've got 3 plants, and keep as much root on as possible. Now, while Rachel and I are busy making this start on our dyer's bed, it's time to go back to join Flo and Joe and the children in Walsall in the West Midlands to see how their sensory garden is progressing.
Which one would you like?
At this allotment plot near Birmingham, Flo and I are combining forces to help a community project grow.
And we mean grow in every sense of the word. This small allotment plot has got big ambitions to help kids with special needs grow their confidence, social skills, and of course, a whole load of plants.
So we're developing a small patch as a sensory garden to tickle all the 5 senses.
And a secret den where the kids can chill out or just get away from the adults. Come on, Joe, and the rest.
Kate Millington is the project manager, and along with some of her volunteers, the kids' teachers, and of course the young gardeners themselves, we've got quite a team to put the plans into action. So far, we've got the bones of the garden laid out. And we've added bark chippings for the main ground cover. They look great and they wear well too, with lots of small feet walking back and forth on them. So the next thing to do is to fill these planters up full of compost, and I need some help for that. Oh, that's handy, isn't it? Look at you lot. Malachi, you see the wheelbarrow behind you?
Yeah.
Can we get that compost into here? We're going to mix in some of this, because we're going to grow Mediterranean plants in here, which like really good drainage, well-drained soil. So we can spread this sand around. Sand, yeah. It's not for a sand pit, it's for planting. And we mix it all together. That's it, mix it all up. So these are for plants like lavender and rosemary and lovely smelly plants. Yeah, you like a bit of that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
My favourite smell.
Yeah? What do you like about it? The smell?
Yeah.
It smells beautiful, doesn't
And
it?
it makes you relax.
That's right. Exactly. Lavender makes you relax, helps you sleep better. Yeah.
And good dreams.
And good dreams. Well done, everybody.
The beauty of being on an allotment is the kindness of other plot holders. Kate has been donated this wheelbarrow, so we're turning it into another planter by adding some strawberries and mint. So there are about 40 children that come to the project, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And they face a number of challenges, I imagine.
Yeah, we have children with lots of different needs, whether it's autism, learning disabilities. We have children that are wheelchair users, children with behavioural or emotional needs, so a whole range of additional needs.
And what difference do you think gardening makes to these children?
It's amazing. I mean, there's so much research about the benefits of being outside for things like mental health, and it really gives them a chance to be independent.
Yeah.
We let them choose how they want to spend their time, what they want to do, so it gives them a lot of confidence, self-esteem, and it's all in a very low-pressure environment. They love it, I love it, so it works for everyone.
Yeah, brilliant.
Back in the sensory area, it's time to get planting. For the smelly section, we've several different types of thyme because the scent is heady and gorgeous.
Okay.
We've also got some rosemary, sage and chives, which all smell great and, of course, taste pretty amazing too.
Move the spade out.
Well, they're clearly having lots of fun over there, and while they are, why don't we get on making the secret den?
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
We're going to use willow, and it's a beautiful material, and it's really flexible, and it's a living material.
Yeah. How can I maintain that then?
Well, it's going to grow fast, and you're going to have to, every year, be cutting back and just kind of keep it in shape.
Yeah.
We've already got the holes, so we're going to put the willow in about 30 centimetres deep.
Okay.
It's going to root anyway and, you know, become much more stable. Is yours going down?
Yeah.
Willow is a really beautiful tactile material to work with and comes in so many different colours. Right, so we've got the walls, so we need a roof now.
Yeah, I'm
So
excited to see how we're gonna
tie
weave
them
it together.
in. Yes.
This planter is all about texture. Close your eyes. No, come on, close your eyes. Now feel the different plants. Okay, that's it. Feel this grass over here. Do you feel all the different texture?
Yeah.
Yeah, now feel this one over here.
This one's plastic. This one's soft.
Exactly, very soft. And this is like plastic waxy, it's like waxy. So now I've explained what it's all about, we can start digging holes and get planting, which is, I know, what you really want to do. Go on, dig a hole right there, and then we're going to put the plant in. How are you getting on over there, Nor?
Not bad. Can we do the small one?
We'll do the smelly one after this. We can't leave a job half finished. So use your hands.
In the final planter, it's all about colour. I want something that really pops and the children will love. Take your plant and just pop it in the hole and see whether it sits okay. Perfect, perfect. So, what do you think of this?
It makes me feel happy because it reminds me of my grandma.
Oh, these flowers remind you of your grandma. And what about you, Anna?
I like this other colour. It's my favourite.
Yeah,
I think all this was made from my family.
It reminds you of your family?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Finally, with all the elements complete for the den and the sensory garden, it's time to see what our young gardeners think.
And what better way to explore the new garden than an Easter egg hunt?
good.
Good.
What's your favourite bit?
The lavender.
The lavender.
The lavender.
Oh, and do you like the smell?
Yeah.
Anna, what about your favourite bit?
My favourite is the leaf that you hold it like this.
Yes, that's my favourite, heuchera.
That's funny, because I thought you were all going to say your favourite bit were the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Well, you've all put in a lot of work. Without you lot, this garden wouldn't be here, would it? You made it happen, didn't you? In one day. It's fantastic.
You've been brilliant. You've all been really good.
Yeah, and we need to say a big thank you, don't we, to our visitors who've helped us. So we say... Thank you!
It's always good to see children stimulated and involved in gardening, and clearly it's good for them. Everybody benefits from that interaction between plants, soil and people. And Flo and Joe will be visiting other community projects across the country over the coming weeks, and we'll be joining them as they lend a hand and give their advice. The dog's tooth violets, the erythroniums, are better than they have ever been this year. There's a certain amount of bulking up that they hit a critical mass and then really look good. But the mixture of weather and time has suited them very well indeed. And they are a charming woodland plant. And yet, when you look at them, so exotic and special. This is one of my favourite jobs of spring, putting up the bean sticks. Now, I'm not going to plant my beans out yet and may not do so for another month because it's too cold. But by putting up the support, it's a statement of intent. You're saying, OK, summer is coming. We're ready, and we're ready with real intent to grow as many good vegetables as possible. But it is important to make sure the structure is really strong. And really get that in. And it should look really good and well made. And one of the reasons I like bean sticks over bamboos is that they are wonky. And wonky is nearly always good. A bit of a curve and a twist and a bend and a kink never did anybody any harm at all. Now the idea is to make a parallel line of sticks or canes, and then we'll tie them up together. And you want to space them about a foot apart. These are going in where there were carrots last year. So legumes follow root crops like carrots and parsnips, fresh compost added to it. Look at that, that is a beautiful, straight hazel rod. And so I'll try and thread this in. So I'll get that really tight down in and then tie it down. So the next stage is to get these diagonals. Maybe if we do one like that, it is amazing how much this strengthens the structure. Right, that's one side. That is now good and strong. We'll take anything that the weather can throw at it and we'll carry the heaviest crop of beans ever grown. Now, obviously, at this time of year, sowing is the key activity. And although the beans need some heat and some mollycoddling to get going, I've got some more veg which I can sow right now outside without worrying about the weather. In this empty bed here, I want to sow peas. It's fair to say there's some controversy about the best way to sow peas. Whether you should sow single rows, double rows, or triple rows, and the best spacing. On balance, I think a double or a triple row is the most economic use of space, and you get the best results. Now, I've got different varieties of peas, ranging from Alderman here, which is 6 foot tall, a really good old-fashioned pea. We've got Eddie, which is the one that I sowed last summer for a very late sowing, so I'll hold this back and make another sowing in June. But actually what I'm going to sow now is Blauwschokker. And these grow about 4 or 5 foot tall and a lovely purple pod. You can eat it before the peas inside start to grow as a mange-tout, and the pod is good and sweet, or you can let them grow and you get a good green pea that is delicious eaten fresh. So it's a good all-rounder that looks really dramatic. Now, the important thing is to leave room between rows to walk and harvest. And it does seem like a horrible waste at this stage, but you could always sow a row of radish or put in some lettuce, a catch crop that will be over and out the way by the time you start tramping along there. Now, I intend to fill this bed with peas, but there's no reason why I should have all the fun. Here's some jobs for you this weekend. If you have a favourite dahlia growing in a pot, now is a very good time to take cuttings. Choose a nice straight shoot and using a sharp knife, cut it off as close to the tuber as you can. Cut off excess foliage and put it into a very gritty compost mix. Then place it somewhere warm, water it, and keep the air around it moist, and it should root in a few weeks' time. If you have spring flowering shrubs, like this winter honeysuckle, the time to prune them is immediately they finish flowering, and certainly before the end of June. And then the new wood that grows and ripens throughout the summer will carry next year's flowers. If you sowed tomatoes earlier in spring, they'll be a good size, but check the roots. And if they're filling the pot, it's time to pot it on because it's too early to plant them out yet. Place the pot in its container inside another one and fill it with compost. And then carefully take out the smaller pot, remove the tomato and pop it back into the space that you've created. Well, it has been a joy to have you here and to see that you do seem to be on the mend.
Yeah, no, I am, Monty. I'm so much better than I was. It's been just fabulous being here today. It's been lovely to see you. It's been too long. And the garden's changed so much and just developed. And these two haven't forgotten me.
No.
We had a lovely walk before. So, yeah, it's been really lovely.
Good. And I am absolutely holding you to coming back to make some dye. Let's make dye from those plants.
Yes, I'm going to bring cloth or something. We'll make something. I'll think about it.
Well, you're very welcome anytime. And I know that you will be joining the programme also doing other things, aren't you?
Yes, I think I'm going to start with doing some containers.
Right.
I've got lots of ideas for really exciting, beautiful pots, and so I want to start doing those, I think.
All right. Well, we look forward to that very much.
Yeah.
That's it. We will, of course, be back next week at the slightly later time of 8:30. So 8:30, but for another hour programme. And I hope you have a wonderful Easter weekend, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.